New DNA study reveals a 7,000-year-old war in ancient India. Guys, you know I've been loving history and loving so many fascinating things like this. So, of course, you guys linked this over. I'm excited to check it out, man. This is basically by Harry Sahota. Hopefully I pronounced that right. But, man, I am excited to see this genuinely because, first of all, not only do I love history, but when things like this come out, absolutely fascinating, bro. And I want to hear the whole story. So, come join me, please. Thank you guys for linking this. Let's see it together.
Genetic collapse so massive, it wiped out nearly every male lineage on Earth.
What?
Only 1 out of every
On the whole
70
Earth?
men on Earth survived. In 2015, a landmark study published in Genome Research revealed something truly shocking. The Neolithic Y chromosome bottleneck, the death of 3.94 million soldiers.
Okay, first of all,
Two civilizations,
what?
thousands of miles apart, speaking two completely different languages, and yet recording the same consequences. DNA collapse, the archaeological scars, the war text, all point to one thing. Something massive happened around 5,000 to 7,000 years ago.
Yeah.
But here's the real challenge. Can we date it? Not with guesses or legends, but with data. In 2015, a landmark study published in Genome Research revealed something truly shocking. A massive collapse in global male genetic diversity. Not just in one region, but across nearly every continent. This event is known as the Neolithic Y chromosome bottleneck. Here's what that means. The Y chromosome, passed down from father to son, suddenly showed a genetic bottleneck, as if nearly all male bloodline had been wiped out in a single window of time.
I just imagine how the scientists felt discovering that. How would you have felt? You were a scientist, like in your shoes, like you almost just see this random drop when you're like, whoa, what happened there? Now I'm scared. Hey, what happened there? Please, what happened?
While the mitochondrial DNA passed from mother stayed stable.
Yeah, this is how you determine male or female.
Scientists one crucial thing. The women survived. The population didn't shrink. Only the lineage of fathers collapsed. Something or someone was selecting which man got to survive and which ones didn't. What kind of event could wipe out 90% of men?
A war.
While leaving most women untouched. Let's put this in modern times. Imagine a scenario where suddenly only 1 out of every 17 men on Earth survives. 8 billion people today. About 4 billion are men. A collapse like that would leave about 225 million men on the planet, fewer than the population of Indonesia. This isn't purely theoretical. During World War I, countries like France, Germany, and UK lost up to 1 in 4 adult men in just 4 years. In the World War II, entire male generations in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union were nearly wiped out.
That's just terrifying to think
about. We have records of those wars. For this one, no written accounts, no declared battles, just a genetic scar buried in our cells. So what
so cool, bro.
It? What
so
kind
cool.
of war was big enough to erase the fathers of humanity and leave almost nothing behind? Maybe the answer isn't in the fossils. Maybe it's in the stories. Some of the most vivid war accounts ever written don't come from modern field reports or declassified military archives. They come from an ancient Indian epic known as the Mahabharata, a text over 200,000 verses, making it the longest surviving epic in human history. For perspective, the Bible has around 31,000 verses. The Iliad and Odyssey combined just under 27,000 lines. The Mahabharata is over 5 times longer.
Which is ridiculously
and within the vast
crazy.
body, more than 25,000 verses are focused on one event alone, the Kurukshetra War. That's not a myth. That's military documentation in poetic form. Day by day, battle records, formations, casualties, tactical decisions, psychological breakdowns. It reads less like a fantasy and more like a civilizational postmortem. To call it mythology is to miss its scale. To call it scripture is to ignore its precision. This is at its core a logbook of societal collapse.
Because they got some things right regardless.
Not through ruins, but through memory. A battle so large, so calculative, and so destructive that it doesn't feel like fiction. It feels like someone was documenting the collapse of a world. The war lasted just 18 days. But within that time, it described the death of 3.94 million soldiers, a figure derived from the breakdown of 18 Akshwanis, specific military divisions defined by infantry, cavalry, chariots, and elephants. This isn't poetic exaggeration. The Mahabharata literally gives us the numbers, the formations, and even the daily progression of the war.
That's craziness.
Each day of the war is documented with named generals, tactics, strategic formations, and even psychological breakdown of the warriors. These are not dreamlike metaphors. These are war logs. And that's why this text matters. Because it doesn't just talk about scale. It talks about weapons that erase terrain, vaporize armies.
So super specific.
And target armies at the level of consciousness. The Brahmastra, for example, is described as a weapon that once unleashed could not be recalled. It emitted unbearable heat, blinding light, and caused stillbirths, barren lands, poison winds, and water that became undrinkable.
Bro, what?
Symptoms that resemble modern radiation fallout. In one passage, the land is described as covered in ash, where nothing would grow for decades. Another verse warns of a wind that burned the sky and turned the warrior nails and hairs white. This isn't mythical language. This is a survivor's report. Other weapons, like the Narayanastra and Pushpastra, are said to be programmable, targeting only armed opponents or attacking through the five elements: earth, air, fire, water, and ether. These aren't bronze spears and wooden shields. These are description of precision targeted, high energy weapons, possibly passed down as memory.
So like spiritually attached to like
in mythic language.
Certain weapons.
It's not just one side that wins. It's almost every dynasty that's erased. Out of millions, only one successor, Parikshit, survives. And even he had to be saved from a womb attack using divine intervention. A new era begins. A new yuga starts. The war isn't just the end of the story. It's the end of a genetic chapter in human history. If a war of this scale truly happened, there should be scars, not just stories. In 1922, an Indian archaeologist named R.D. Banerjee, working under British Sir John Marshall of Archaeological Survey of India, unearthed the ruins of a vast unknown city in present-day Pakistan. It would later be called Mohenjo-daro, one of the largest cities of the ancient Indus Valley.
That's just incredible to think about.
What they found was astonishing. Planned grid-like streets.
Yeah, dude.
Multi-story homes. Advanced drainage systems that rival some modern cities.
Like what?
But what ended it was a mystery. There was no sign of invasion, no flood sediments, no epidemic graves. And yet, the city was abandoned, suddenly and without rebuilding. During early excavations, 33 skeletons were found lying in the streets. Many face down, some hand in hand, as if something struck them all at once. No visible wounds, no weapons, no signs of struggle. In the 1970s, researchers like David Davenport, in collaboration with Italian scientist Ettore Vincenti, claimed to find evidence of vitrification. Areas where stones and clay had melted and fused into glass, consistent with heat exposure above 1,500 degrees
Oh my
Celsius.
goodness!
Their reports documented a specific area with what they called a focal blast zone, where a layer of focused clay and greenish glass had formed, but without any natural explanation like volcanic activity.
Yeah.
And Mohenjo-daro isn't an isolated case. Similar heat melted structures have been found across the world. In Scotland, over 70 vitrified forts. The stone walls melted from within. Silusestani.
Yo, stuff like this is just so scary to think about. Like, what did that? Like, what natural... I mean, the only natural cause that I personally can think of that could cause something like to melt that hot, to cause something like that, is maybe like... But then again, I already know what's going to happen. I already know the comeback to this. I'm going to say like meteor hit, right? Something like that, like an asteroid hit, right? But then where would be the pieces of it? You would see different destruction, but instead you just see melting. See, things like this, bro. This is what I love about history. How intriguing and like how it makes your brain like try to come up with something. But sometimes that's the beauty of it. You can't. Like, bro, like what is happening?
In Peru, where ancient burial towers show signs of localized stone fusion. Bebine Lake, British Columbia,
Bro.
and Alba Longo in Italy, both containing glassy, scorched ruins without volcanic origins. These aren't just mysteries of architecture. These are the signs that massive, sudden heat, beyond anything fire or metallurgy could explain, was unleashed in multiple places across the world.
That's insane,
and what's strange, that many of these sites date roughly to the same period, 5000 to 3000 BCE, the same window in which the Y chromosome bottleneck occurred. So you have a genetic collapse in the record, an ancient war text describing womb-targeted destruction, and physical evidence of cities struck by intense heat, suddenly abandoned. These may not be disconnected stories. They may be the archaeological, genetic, and literary echoes of a forgotten.
Aren't meteorites like separate too? Like,
while ancient India was preserving the memory of a civilization-ending war in verse, another part of the world was etching its stories into stone. In ancient Sumer, one of the world's oldest known civilizations, located in present-day Iraq, scribes used cuneiform scripts on clay tablets to record their history. What these tablets describe is astonishing. In the texts like the Enuma Elish and the Arthur's epic, they speak of powerful beings called the Anunnaki, divine rulers or sky gods who governed over humans, resources, and the planet itself. In texts like the Enuma Elish and the Arthur's epic, we find description of intense conflict, not between kings or tribes, but between factions of the gods themselves. The chief figures are Enlil and Enki.
This is terrifying.
Enlil is described as a strict, controlling leader who wants to eliminate humanity. Enki, his brother, is the protector of humans, the one who walked among men and tried to preserve life. Their rivalry leads to a celestial war, with accounts of cities scorched by fire from the skies, winds poisoned, and humans genetically re-engineered for control. One translation of the Lament of Ur reads, "The storm left the city in ruins. Houses were flattened. Blood filled the wells. The people vanished like smoke."
My goodness.
This isn't abstract. It's post-battle description. Other tablets refer to flying machines, described as moving between the heavens and the earth, and weapons capable of turning cities to ash.
See, this is why people believe in UFOs. Is like
the use of great weapon that caused blindness, sickness, and skin burns, all symptoms we now associate with radiation exposure. The tablets preserved in the British Museum, Louvre, and Istanbul, and digitized in ETCSL,
terrifyingly
are not
crazy.
Just fictional poetry. Now pause, because this language doesn't just echo that of Sumer's neighbors. It mirrors almost perfectly the descriptions of the Brahmastra's aftermath from the Mahabharata: blinding light, poisoned air, burnt earth, stillborn children, two civilizations, thousands of miles apart. speaking two completely different languages, and yet recording the same consequences.
Yeah, that's insane.
Either they were both writing the same fiction, or
Yeah,
they
see?
were writing from experience. Different perspectives, same war. Up to this point, everything that we have seen, the DNA collapse, the archaeological scars, the war text, all point to one thing. Something massive happened around 5,000 to 7,000 years ago. But here's the real challenge. Can we date it? Not with guesses or legends, but with data. One Indian researcher, Nilesh Oak, attempted exactly that. Instead of relying on archaeological layers or linguistic guesses, he turned to the sky. The Mahabharata isn't just poetry. It's filled with astronomical references, eclipses, planetary conjunctions, lunar phases, star positions during the key events. Nilesh Oak inputs over 215 unique sky observations from the Mahabharata into modern astronomical software, including planetary longitudes, nakshatras, constellations, eclipse data, and lunar phases.
Yo.
According to Nilesh Oak's
Imagine
model,
experiencing that
there's
then.
only one time in
Terrifying.
the last 10,000 years when the sky matches all the astronomical events described in the Mahabharata.
Uh-oh.
And that's 5,561 BCE.
Yeah.
More precisely,
Puzzle
the
piece.
Mahabharata war should have started on October 16, 5,561 BCE, based on exact planetary positions. So what kind of data are we talking about? Well, here's the breakdown. In modern terms, Saturn was positioned near the bright red star, Aldebaran, parts of the Taurus constellation. The Mahabharata says that this position was inauspicious, and modern astronomy confirms that it occurred in that year. Second, Mars was retrograde in Jeshta. That means Mars appeared to move backward in the night sky, near the star Antares in the Scorpius constellation. This rare retrograde motion matches the wartime omen described by Vyas in the Mahabharata.
Yeah.
Third, Jupiter-Moon conjunction.
So it literally is fitting with it.
Jupiter and the Moon were in the same part of the sky, near the star Zeta Piscium in the Pisces constellation, exactly where the text says they were during key events leading up to the battle. Fourth, two eclipses within 13 days.
Yo.
This is one of the Mahabharata's most dramatic warnings. Two eclipses, a solar and a lunar, within a 2-week span. Astronomical simulations confirm in 5,561 BCE, this eclipse pairing did happen, and it's a rare event. Number 5, Venus in Purva Bhadrapada. Venus appeared near a star group now linked with the Pegasus constellation. And this alignment was mentioned by Bhishma on his deathbed as he tracked the sky waiting for the winter solstice to pass. These aren't poetic metaphors. These are sky coordinates, data points. And when plotted using modern astronomy softwares like Stellarium or NASA's JPL, these alignments only occur together once in over 10,000
Oh my
years.
goodness, bro. So it
And the
lines
date,
up. It's crazy.
October 5,561 BC. That's not a coincidence. That's a timestamp embedded in an epic.
That's incredible.
There's something ancient India did that no other civilization even attempted. It didn't just watch the sky. It recorded history through it. While most ancient cultures mark time by kings or dynasties, Indian texts like the Mahabharata and Ramayana marked it using planetary alignments
That's
and
crazy.
celestial events.
So they
It's
were really
as
like
if
the first.
The sky itself was used as a ledger, a living archive that couldn't be altered, rewritten, or destroyed. And here's the stunning part. These details were not stored in scientific manuals or star charts. They were woven in epic, passed through generations as stories, accessible to anyone, yet decodable by those who knew how to read the stars. This isn't religious. This isn't symbolic. It's astronomical encoding of historical memories. Other civilizations told you what happened, but here, India told you when. Not just with lows,
Wow.
but with sky-log precision.
Didn't even realize how
So now,
accurate it helped.
We have looked at the genome. We have looked at the war. We have looked at the Earth. Now it's time to ask the question, does any of this actually lines up, or are we just chasing shadows? According to most estimates, the global population around 5000 to 3000 BCE was roughly 5 to 20 million people. Let's take a conservative midpoint, around 10 million. Now, the Mahabharata describes a war involving 3.94 million soldiers, all men. That's almost 40% of the global male population at that time.
Almost
if
half,
not
bro.
more. And remember, these are just the warriors, not counting the support staff, civilians, and the dynasties they belong to. Suddenly, the Y chromosome collapse doesn't sound far-fetched. It sounds mathematically aligned. A war that wipes out every dynasty, every male heir, every royal lineage, leaving only one successor. That's not symbolic. That's a genetic reset. The 2015 genome study that revealed the male line bottleneck wasn't based on a narrow sample. It analyzed DNA for over 120 populations across 6 continents, including Africa, Europe, Central Asia, East Asia, and the Americas. The result, the collapse wasn't regional. It was global. And that matches exactly what the Mahabharata hints at.
Yeah, that's
A
terrifying.
conflict that wasn't contained to Bharat alone, but extended across the known world. The epic mentions names like Yavana, Kamboj, China, and Shakas, tribes later associated with regions as far as Greece, Central Asia, and China. Now, these were not dynasties that participated in the war itself. Most scholars agree that these names were later editorial substitutions, used to describe regions that would be familiar to audience centuries later. They weren't acronyms, they were directional markers. And they align with the same geographic arc where the genetic collapse occurred. Coincidence or encoded memory of a war that spread farther?
This is why it's important, man, to jot all this down.
Some Indian texts even
when they would do this.
Warriors emerging from Patal Lok. Not a mythic underworld, but possibly a reference to the land on the opposite side of the earth. Draw a line straight through the earth from India and you arrive in Mesoamerica. So here's what we are left with. A datable war, 5561 BCE. A massive male extension event proven through DNA. A global spread of ruins and scorched earth. These weren't tribal records. They were global echoes, preserved long before we even called it a globe. This isn't mythology.
Before they even called it a globe.
Multidisciplinary
That's what I'm saying.
evidence of a forgotten global event. But here's where it gets deeper. You might ask that how were these stories with exact numbers, formations, and star positions passed down so accurately before paper, before scripts, and before satellites? The answer may lie not in ruins, but in the human brain itself. Studies on collective memory and cultural transmission show that societies encode trauma through narrative repetition, rituals, poetry, and symbols. This is how oral culture preserved information across thousands of years. Think about it. What if the Mahabharata wasn't just a tale, but a trauma map, recited generation after generation? Because the mind refuses to forget what the earth itself never healed from. What if Sumerian tablets weren't myths, but etched therapy, trying to process what had happened? Maybe that's why the details remain. The sky positions, the names, the burning wind, because some part of humanity refused to let the memory die. I didn't set out to prove a theory. I set out to follow the data wherever it led. And what I found wasn't mythological. It wasn't speculation. It was a pattern, a story that keeps repeating across disciplines, continents, and languages, like a drumbeat buried just below the surface of history. I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to show you what's being ignored. Because sometimes truth doesn't shout. It whispers through stone, through silence, through scars in the genome, and stories written in the stars. If ancient civilizations encoded what they lived through, not just in temples or tablets, but in memory itself, then maybe our job today is not to dismiss those records.
Dang.
But to finally listen.
Dang.
If you felt that this story challenged
Awesome.
what we think we know, share it.
You know, I absolutely love this because it really does show you that there's always that argument of how many things have we not discovered yet? How many things that we actually do not know still from the history or things that we've experienced as humans and all over the world have experienced. Like, there's so much still there, and India and so many other places like that are very crucial to this because, I mean, it is the world. And in these places, they have all of their recollections. And if some of them are matching with different languages, like, something tells you that there's something we're missing. And I just feel like it is so beautiful and fascinating to look at, you know, the thoughts and the way that we were, in a sense, and how we felt and how we had trauma in our own way and how we dealt with that said trauma in our different way than we do now, right? Like, now you dealing with Trump, you go on TikTok. That's what y'all be doing, right? Like, some of y'all be doing that. Don't lie to me. And I know maybe you don't go on TikTok. Maybe you go on Instagram Reels. Same thing. It's the same. I'm going to just say it's the same. You feel me? Hey. But with that being said, that's like the trauma. As goofy as it sounds, like, some people just be doing that, right? It's not healthy. It's not. I don't do that. When I deal with trauma, I don't be going on Instagram Reels. I just try to deal with it myself, man. Things that happen to me, I try to deal with it. I try to write about it. I try to talk about it. That's the healthy way. But if you notice and pick up on that, that's kind of similar to what, you know, humans would do back then. You know, they would talk about it or write about it. But of course, who knows? What is the unhealthy way that they probably would? Maybe they would all just go to war. Maybe they would be angry. They would lash out on people. That's how they dealt with trauma. Who knows how, like, the unhealthy version that we have today versus the unhealthy version that they would do back then. Like, there might be a huge difference in that. And on top of that, who knows the kind of traumas that they would go to specific, right? And there's so much crazy stuff that you can possibly think about with humans back then, and the amount of wars or scary things that would have happened that they can't even comprehend. It's just a crazy thought to think about, which is why I love videos like this that really force you to think about it and force you to reevaluate. And so I just want to thank you guys for linking this over, and thank you so much to the YouTuber Harry Sahota. This was a dope video, and thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Hey, if you liked it, leave a like. If you loved it, subscribe. If you want more, let me know down in the comments below. And yeah, till next time, guys. Peace. How good you been living? Wait, how good you been living? I've been living too good for you. I've been living too. Did what I did and I do it again. Every move that I make, I ain't feeling repent. Nobody believes to believe it's a friend, and you question your moves like you really won't end.